Assalamu alaikum. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you for the confirmation. Uh, okay, so we'll start with today's lecture. We'll just continue from where we left. So we were discussing about drag force. So hopefully this week we will be finishing this chapter 9, and after this we will be starting chapter 10, which is on compressible flow from next week. So we were discussing about drag force, and we discussed that drag force, non-dimensional form of drag force is CD, and it is given as D, where D is the drag force in newtons, divided by half rho u square A, where rho is the density of fluid, u is the velocity, and A is the area. So this is how we non-dimensionalize drag force, and CD, because it is non-dimensional, it does not have any units. Now, drag coefficient depends on a lot of factors. The most important factor on which the drag force depends on is the shape of the structure that is placed in the flow. Apart from the shape, it also depends on Reynolds number. We discussed this in detail, and it also depends on Mach number. So now Mach number, when we have Mach number greater than zero point 0.3 or zero point 0.5, then the flow becomes compressible. In compressible flow, the density no longer remains constant. When Mach number is less than zero point 0.5, we can assume that density is constant and the flow is called incompressible flow. Incompressible flow means it cannot be compressed. That means density is constant, right? So now in this figure, we were looking at the compressibility effects, and you can clearly see that this graph is giving us the Mach number on x-axis, excuse me, and the drag coefficient on y-axis for two different shapes. One is for a circular cylinder. So this is showing you the front view of the cylinder. Actually, it is like this. So this is actually a circular cylinder like this. But if we see this circular cylinder from the front view, we will see only a square like this, which is called the projected area. So this is the results for a circular cylinder, and this is the case for this is the results for an ellipse. So these are the experimental results obtained from wind tunnel. So you can clearly see that till Mach number of zero point 0.5, the drag coefficient is almost constant, not changing much. It starts to change at higher Mach number. Around this point, you can see that there is evident change in there. So after, when we increase Mach number greater than zero point 0.5, you can clearly see that slowly it starts to increase the lift drag coefficient. Similarly, you can see here the same graph, and this is showing you the results for um, three different shapes: a circular cylinder, a sphere, and in this case we have a pointed sharp groove, so body. So you can see that we have a cone type body here. So you can see one thing which is clear, that for this pointed cone shaped body, the drag coefficient is less as compared to sphere, which is less as compared to a circular cylinder. Moreover, you can see that these results here are only shown for Mach number of 1, whereas these results are for Mach number of 6. So for Mach number of 1, the results might be similar to these, right? But you can see that as we increase the Mach number beyond 1, uh, for circular cylinder, the drag coefficient keeps on increasing, whereas for sphere, it increases up to a critical point, and then it decreases and remains almost constant. And for a pointed or a pointed cone, you can see that it increases till this critical value and then starts decreasing like this. So these are the experimental results obtained, and this shows us the dependence of drag force or drag coefficient on Mach number for different shapes. Now, drag force also depends on surface roughness. Um, we already discussed about, so if you we are not going into detail of this, but just remember that so far when we consider a flat plate like this and we consider the surface to be smooth, the boundary layer is decomposed into different regions. So initially the boundary layer changes linearly. So you can see that in this region, the velocity u varies linearly with y, with y. Then we have another region where it becomes non-linear. Then it starts to vary logarithmically. You can see that there is the velocity changes significantly with y. So there is logarithmic change here. And then ultimately after this, the flow becomes turbulent. And then this is the end of boundary layer. This is just to show you that this is boundary layer. So inside the boundary layer, for smooth boundary layer, we can define these into different regions, right? So I think in the book it's not given, but this is so each of these region, they have their own equations. For example, in this logarithmic region, u velocity is a function of ln log of y. Similarly, in this, then we have turbulent region, and then so every region has its own equation. So this is how we have boundary layer. So these equations that govern that the boundary layer are found from experimental analysis, right? So this is for a smooth boundary layer. Now, when the boundary of this flat plate becomes rough, now, how can we make it rough? We can sprinkle it, we can sprinkle sand particles or sand on top of this surface. When we sprinkle sand on top of this surface, those sand particles, they offer roughness to the surface. They add roughness to the surface. Now, in that case, the boundary layer that we have on top of this will be different from this smooth boundary layer, right? So that will be different from this smooth boundary layer. And there are two different laws that can be used to find these boundary layers. One is called logarithmic law, and the other one is called 1/7 law, 1/7 power law. Okay, so I won't be going into details of this. In the second assignment that I will be giving you this week, it is on these. It is on these two laws. So you have to find these laws yourself and solve a question that I will be giving to you in this week's assignment. So you need to know these two rules or laws that governs rough boundary layer. Okay, so now clearly you can see that the boundary layer in case of smooth surface and in case of rough surface is different. Since the boundary layer is different, the shear forces associated with boundary layer will also be different in both the cases, right? So therefore surface roughness have significant effect on the drag force. So now, depending on the body shape, an increase in surface roughness may increase or decrease drag. So now drag depends on the shape of the body, number one. It depends on Reynolds number. Number two, it depends on Mach number. We also discussed that it depends on Froude number. Froude number becomes significant when we have surface effects or surface waves in case of waves and currents. And then we have, it also depends on surface roughness, which is denoted by E by L, where E is the roughness. E is the roughness in meters. So depending on the body shape, an increase in surface roughness may increase or decrease drag. Now for sphere, now you can see that for a sphere, this is actually a graph which gives you Reynolds number on your x-axis and CD drag coefficient on your y-axis. So now you can see that you can see multiple graphs here. So this dotted graph is for golf ball. Just hold on for a second. Okay, so this golf ball, this dotted line is for the golf ball, right? And then you can see that all these lines have different E by D roughness. So E by D is relative roughness. So E is in meters, and when we are dealing with the sphere, we divide it by its diameter to non-dimensionalize it, the roughness. So E by D is actually non-dimensional roughness, or in other words, relative roughness, right? So now you can see that when E by D is 0 for a sphere, then we have this solid line represents those, right? As we increase the surface roughness to 1.5 into 10 raised to the power minus 3, you can see that the drag force is also increasing. When we further increase it, the drag force increases. So that means as we increase the surface roughness, the drag force is increasing. And if you look at a golf ball also has dimples on top of it, and it also has a rough surface. You can feel the roughness while touching the golf ball. So that golf ball is represented by this first line here, right? So this is giving, and it is sphere in shape. So the results are also given for a golf ball, right? So these are the results. This is how the roughness affects the drag force or drag coefficient.
सर
Yes, please.
सर यहाँ पे तो ये लाइन गोल्फ बॉल वाली तो इससे नीचे नहीं है सॉलिड लाइन से
सॉलिड लाइन के नीचे एक्चुअली गोल्फ बॉल जो है ना, उसमें और रेगुलर सफेयर में दो फर्क है। उसमें ये फर्क है कि जो रेगुलर सफेयर है हमारे पास, वो एक सॉलिड बॉडी है, ठीक है, जिसमें डिंपल्स नहीं होते। लेकिन अगर आप गोल्फ बॉल को देखें ना, उसको उसको उसकी ड्रैग फोर्स को रिड्यूस करने के लिए ना, उन्होंने उसके ऊपर डिंपल्स भी डाले होते हैं, वो जो स्लॉट्स अंदर बने होते हैं, आपने देखी भी है ना। तो
जी
ये
सर
फर्क है, इसकी वजह से आप देखें कि ड्रैग फोर्स उसका फर्क आ रहा है।
ठीक है सर
ठीक है, उसकी शेप फर्क है। उस डिंपल्स की वजह से ना, वो दोज डिंपल्स आर एडेड ऑन गोल्फ बॉल टू डिले द फ्लो सेपरेशन, क्योंकि फ्लो उसके अंदर जाके और टाइम स्पेंड करती है। इसकी वजह से जो जब फ्लो सेपरेशन हो डिले होगी, तो उसका ड्रैग जो है ना वो कम होगा। इस वजह से हमारे पास उसका ड्रैग फोर्स कम आ रहा
सही है सर
है। और बाकी जो रेगुलर केस में जो है, सिर्फ हम अज्यूम करें कि वो रेगुलर सफेयर है, जिसमें कोई डिंपल नहीं है, उसका सारा जो है वो रेगुलर शेप है। और जैसे हम उसकी रफनेस चेंज करते हैं, तो यू कैन सी अ ट्रेंड ये सिमिलर ट्रेंड इस तरह आ रहा है ये। So now this table is just summarizing the drag coefficient. Now normally जो मुख्तलिफ शेप्स के ऊपर जब हम रेनॉल्ड्स नंबर चेंज करते हैं, तो आपने पहले भी देखा है कि रेनॉल्ड्स नंबर, लो रेनॉल्ड्स नंबर हो तो फ्लूइड की फ्लो फिजिक्स फर्क होती है. व्हेन वी इंक्रीज द रेनॉल्ड्स नंबर and the flow starts to become transition from laminar to turbulent, the flow physics starts to change. And then when we have turbulent region, the flow physics is entirely different. So इतनी variation और non linearity flow physics में आती है कि जो मैथमेटिकल इक्वेशंस हैं उनके सॉल्यूशंस को ऑब्टेन करना बड़ा बड़ा मुश्किल हो जाता है. सो नॉर्मली द रिजल्ट्स दैट आर शोन हियर आर मोस्टली फ्रॉम एक्सपेरिमेंटल analysis. Okay, so now the result that I'm showing you now is, you can see that we have, this is taken from the book, so you can see for different shapes the reference area is different for different shapes. That makes sense, right? And then the drag coefficient is given by this, so this is giving you a drag coefficient for different shapes at this Reynolds number. For example, for a square rod with rounded corner, the area is given by B times D, where D is the diameter, this length, and D is the diameter and B is its length, this length. Right now, as we change R by D ratio, R ये है और D है, तो CD भी change होगा, because if we are changing, when we change R by D, we are actually changing the shape of it, right? So the CD will change. This is for results RE equals to 10 raised to the power 5. Now, if you look at this case, this is a case of rounded equilateral triangle which has rounded corners, right? Now, this is the radius, this is R, and this is D. These are the two characteristic lengths. The area again is given by B into D, which is used to calculate the CD value. Now, in this case, when we change R by D ratio, we have two values of CD. The first value is where the flow is coming in this direction, which is indicated by this arrow. The second case is when the flow is coming in opposite direction, right? क्योंकि इस केस में क्या होगा, क्योंकि शेप इसकी जो है ना वो सिमेट्रिक नहीं है. जब फ्लो इधर से आ रही होगी तो ये स्ट्रीमलाइन बॉडी बॉडी होगी, इसके ऊपर से फ्लो इस तरह गुजर रही होगी, यहाँ सेपरेट हो रही होगी. अगर इसी को हम इसको इन्वर्ट कर देते हैं इस तरह, उस केस में फ्लो इधर से आ रही है तो फ्लो इधर से इस तरह जाएगी और इस तरह सेपरेट होगी. मतलब इट इज जस्ट लाइक अ फ्लैट प्लेट एक्चुअली इन दैट केस. ठीक है, तो अब इस दोनों केस में फर्क है. तो यू कैन क्लियरली सी दैट दिस इज अ केस ऑफ ब्लंट बॉडी. ब्लंट बॉडी जो होती है वो परपेंडिकुलर टू द फ्लो होती है. स्ट्रीमलाइन बॉडी होती है जो कि ऑलमोस्ट पैरेलल टू द फ्लो होती है. अब उस केस में आप देख ले, ब्लंट बॉडी की जो रेजिस्टेंस ऑफर कर रही है वो ज्यादा है, इस वजह से ड्रैग फोर्स जो है वो greater है as compared to streamlined body, right? This is the case. Similarly, wherever these arrows are shown, it indicates the direction of flow. This means this arrow means this direction, and the other arrow means the flow is going in opposite direction, right? And similarly, we will see everywhere when you have blunt body, the drag force is greater as compared to a streamlined body, right? So these are all the typical values that we have. Now, the next slide, this is also showing you the frontal reference area and the drag coefficient for more complicated shapes. For example, parachute, flag, Empire State Building, and passenger train, bicycle. So it is showing you the experimental results of drag coefficient for different complex shapes, right? So now this is the end of drag force part of the topic. Now we'll be focusing on lift for the rest of this lecture today. So now mm, any object uh, moving through a fluid will experience a net force of the fluid on the object, right? That means कि कोई भी object जो fluid में move कर होगा, any object moving through a fluid will experience a net force of the fluid on the object, right? So we all know about this. Now for objects symmetrical perpendicular to the upstream flow, this force will be in the direction of free stream, that is drag force. So what does that mean? Now we already went through this example. I'll just go through this again. So now let's consider example of circular cylinder, which is a symmetrical body, right? Now in this case, when the incoming flow is coming in this direction, this represents the center of the cylinder circle, right? So the flow particle or the incoming flow that will hit or strike the circular cylinder at the center point will have zero velocity because of stagnation point. The particle of flow that will be going over the circular cylinder will move like this and separate from this point, and the particle that is moving below will move like this and separate like this. Because the strength of the shear layer, the strength of the fluid particle, this fluid particle or the path that this fluid particle is following is also called shear layer. So the path of that this shear layer, the strength of the shear layer above the circular cylinder and the strength of the shear layer below the circular cylinder is the same. As a result, the force generated in this direction, downward direction, will be, for example, F minus Fy, and the force generated by this shear layer will be positive Fy. And then because they are the same, their strength is the same, they will cancel out. So the net force acting along y-axis will be 0. That means in this case, the only force that will be acting will be the drag force. The lift force will be 0 in this case. But now if you look at the direction of incoming flow, the incoming flow is flowing in this direction, and there is no opposite flow that is opposing it, right? So there will be net drag force acting in this direction, Fx, right? So in case of circular cylinder, there is only the only force present is drag force. The lift force is not there, right? Now you can also think of it like this. If you remember, we considered a case that, let's suppose at time t equals to t1, we discussed about vortex shedding also. So when we discussed about vortex shedding, we discussed that at time t equals to t1, we have a circular cylinder, flow moving here. This is vortex A, and flow here, vortex B. Depending on the Reynolds number, the vortex A will be greater, or the vortex B will generate much quick or earlier than vortex B. Therefore, there is difference in their timings. And then this is at time t equals to t1. Now at time t equals to t2, what happens? Because this vortex B is moving in anti-clockwise direction and vortex A is moving in clockwise direction, there will be a point when this B vortex and A grows, B will come in the path of A and will cut it like this. And as a result, at t equals to t2, what will happen? This vortex A will be shed from the cylinder. This is called vortex shedding. And because the incoming flow is continuous, there will be another shear layer developing like this, and the vortex that is below the circular cylinder now will be growing, will have grown in size more like this, which is B. And then there is another vortex C generating on top. This C will ultimately cut B at time t equals to t3. And then what's going to happen? We will have two vortices in the wake. A shed first, B shed afterwards. A is clockwise, B is anti-clockwise. Now C is already growing, and there is another vortex generating from the bottom, which is D now. D. And again, D will cut C, and this way we have periodic vortex shedding, shed like this, one after the other, like this in the wake. This is called periodic vortex shedding or Kármán vortex street also. Now, if you look at these vortices, because the flow is symmetric, the body is symmetric, the strength of the vortex that is shed from the top and the strength of the vortex that is shed from the bottom they will have the same strength, but their timing will be different. When timing is different, so now if I plot this vortex shedding on like this, on t is time and f is the lift force, for example. Now, when this top vortex is shed, it will generate a force in downward direction. When this bottom vortex is shed, it will generate a force in upward direction. Both these forces will be the same, but their timing will be different. That means now if vortex A is shed, right? So I can say that we can represent it by a force like this, like this. When vortex B is shed, force like this. When vortex C is shed, like this, like this, like this. So because the timing is different, when we plot this force versus time, we will have periodic variation of lift force like this. This is for bottom vortex, this is for top vortex, bottom top, and so on, right? Now, when I say that the lift force is zero, what does that mean? Because the strength of the top and bottom vortex is zero, when I take average of this force, when I take average, I denote this by average. When I take mean or average of lift force, it will always be zero. Why it will be zero? Because the strength of the vortices shed from the top and the bottom are equal. But instantaneous FL, instantaneous lift force will not be zero. It will have a value. So now the net average force that is acting on a circular cylinder because of symmetry is zero. And the only force, now if I draw the same for the same circular cylinder, if I draw another figure in which I draw T and drag force now, right? So now clearly these vortices will also contribute towards drag force, and that drag force might be like this, also periodic, right? Now in this case, this is zero, the mean is zero, but in this case, the mean will not be zero. This is zero mean. When I take average of drag force, it will be in the direction of incoming flow u, right? That will be in the direction of incoming flow u. ड्रैग फोर्स जो है उसका मीन जीरो नहीं होगा क्योंकि वो इनकमिंग फ्लो उस डायरेक्शन में जा रही है एंड इट विल हैव अ नॉन जीरो mean value, but lift force will be zero for symmetric body. This is what he's saying here, that for symmetrical for objects symmetrical perpendicular to the upstream flow, this force will be in the direction of free stream drag force. Now, if the object is not symmetrical, or if it does not produce symmetrical flow field, such as flow around a rotating sphere, there may also be a force normal to the free stream lift. Now, in order to understand this, right, so it says that if the body is not symmetric, then there will also be lift force. Now, let's suppose if we have the same circular cylinder here, and now I we rotate it by omega. So we give this circular cylinder a rotation omega. So what is going to be the effect of this rotation? It will make the flow unsymmetrical. How it will make the flow unsymmetrical? Because of this rotation, when the flow that is going from the bottom side will have more velocity. Incoming flow velocity तो इसकी है ही है क्योंकि because of this rotation omega there will also be tangential velocity on the surface, and then when we add that tangential velocity ut plus u, that will increase the velocity on the bottom side of the cylinder. Whereas if you look at the rotation, this velocity uh, tangential velocity because of this omega or rotation will be in this direction here. So here what will happen? U minus ut. So the velocity here will be reduced on top and there will be more velocity on bottom, right? So now if the velocity here is more, pressure will be low here. and because we have less velocity here, pressure will be high here. So now you can see that the pressure force is different on the top and the bottom. Therefore, as a result, there will be unbalanced pressure force that will be acting in this direction, and that will contribute to lift force. So in this case, mean value of lift force will not be 0 in case of rotating cylinder. Also note another thing, that the lift force is because of the pressure force, is dominated by the pressure force, whereas the drag force is dominated by the viscous force, that is because of the boundary layer. Okay, so now this is what he's saying: if the object is not symmetrical, right, such as the case of rotating sphere, then there might be a force normal to the free stream, a lift force also, in addition to drag force. So उस केस में lift force भी होगा हमारे पास और drag force भी होगा. So lift force mathematically is given by L. इधर जो है it is in newtons. When we divide it by half rho u square a, we are actually non-dimensionalizing it. So newtons will cancel with newton, and then it will be non-dimensional. So this is called lift coefficient, and it is non-dimensional form of lift force. Now again, as we saw earlier for the drag force, the lift force is also a function of shape. As we saw in this case, when we are rotating the cylinder, actually we are if you look at this way, the body is becoming non-symmetrical, unsymmetrical or non-symmetrical, and that means the shape of the body actually has changed. जब सर्कुलर सिलेंडर होगा तो बॉडी सिमेट्रिकल है, जब हम उसको हम रोटेट करेंगे तो फ्लो सिमेट्रिकल नहीं रहेगी. इट इज एज इफ वी आर चेंजिंग द शेप of the body, right? So cl depends on the shape of the body also. In other words, if we have a triangular structure, the lift force will be different for this triangular structure. In case of square, the lift force will be different. In case of a rectangle, it will be different. In case of an ellipse, it will be different. So Reynolds, so lift coefficient also depends on the shape, as drag coefficients also depend on the shape also. Now in addition to shape, the lift coefficient also depends on the Reynolds number. It also depends on the Mach number. It also depends on the Froude number, and it also depends on the surface roughness. Froude number, if you recall, we already discussed about Froude number. I'll just give you a quick definition of Froude number again. So Froude number becomes relevant when we have inertial force and gravitational force. As in the case of free surfaces, when we have free surfaces, they are such as currents and waves in ocean, they are subjected to gravitational forces. In that case, Froude number becomes significant. So cl also depends on Froude number when we have structures placed on such types of flows. And then Reynolds number, we all know it is inertial force over viscous force. So when we have boundary layer flow, then Reynolds number is significant in that case. And then again, we already discussed about E by L, where E is the roughness of the structure. So lift coefficient also depends on these things. The most important parameter that affects the lift coefficient is the shape of the object. For that is for sure, because depending on the shape of the object, we can have symmetrical flow or unsymmetrical flow. Now, usually most lift coefficient, when while we saw this in case of a flat plate also. So the reason I am just relating these examples of flat plate and circular cylinder time and again is that so that you can relate the concept of lift with the things that we have already studied in this lecture. So now in case of this flat plate, we already saw here that if the incoming flow is coming in this direction, we have boundary layer flow. When we have boundary layer flow, the drag or the skin friction is along parallel to the incoming flow, and it is given by the viscous component tau, which is because of the boundary layer, right? And the pressure force contributes to the lift force. So the drag force, the shear force contributes to the drag force, and pressure force contributes to the lift force, right? So usually most lift comes from the pressure forces, not viscous forces. Now you can see here we have a car on which the lift distribution or the pressure distribution is shown on its surface, right? So now these gray regions are where we have pressure which is greater than the static pressure, and this blue region is where the pressure is less than the static pressure. So normally on the windscreen, on the front of the car, right, we have high pressure zones, and on the roof and on the bonnet we have low pressure zones, right? The incoming flow is U, and the incoming pressure or the initial pressure is P naught, right? Now this is because of the shape of the automobile. We have different pressure distribution on different parts of the car. If we take resultant or integrate this pressure along the entire surface of the automobile, the we will have net force or net pressure acting in, for example, maybe in upward direction like this pressure force. Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
I thought that I just got disconnected. Okay, thank you.
यस सर, अभी कुछ 2-3 मिनट के लिए हुए डिस्कनेक्ट, उसके बाद अब आप दोबारा आ चुके।
अच्छा, ओके, सॉरी। तो आप ये फॉलो कर लिया था आपने ये स्लाइड, या ये?
जी जी सर, ये प्रेशर तक कर लिया था।
चलिए ठीक है। तो और okay, now we already went through this aerofoil example in the start also. A typical device designed to produce lift does so by generating a pressure distribution that is different on the top and bottom of the surface. So that was the same concept that in which the aerofoil or the wing of the aircraft works. So we already know that this shape is called an aerofoil. So if you might have seen this shape, if you look at the wing from the side view, you will see this shape. So the wing will be like this, side view, and then this is the wing. So if you look at the wing will also have a shape like this. This shape is called an aerofoil. If you look at the turbines, blade of the turbines, if you look at the windmill blades, if you look at the sail of the boat, all of these structures, they use these aerofoils to generate more lift. So the advantage of using this shape is this shape is capable of generating more lift as compared to drag. How it generates more lift as compared to drag? Because of the shape of this aerofoil. If we increase the angle of attack, in this case you can see that we have a symmetrical aerofoil like this. So in this case, why it is symmetrical? If I draw an axis from the middle of this aerofoil, it will divide this aerofoil into two equal halves. Now if we have the incoming flow in this direction, which is along x-axis. So part of the flow will go on top of this aerofoil, and part of the flow will go from the bottom side of this aerofoil. Again, as in the case of circular cylinder, the strength of these shear layers will be the same because of the symmetry, and as a result there will be no lift force acting along y direction, and it will only have drag force Fd in this case. Right, now what if we increase the angle of attack? Now if we increase the angle of attack, there are two ways of increasing the angle of attack. Now if we increase the angle of attack like this is angle of attack alpha, this is incoming flow u. So we are increasing the angle of attack. This is the same as saying that the aerofoil is stationary, it is along x-axis, and we are changing the incoming flow. So this case and this case are both actually the same. So now in this case we are changing the orientation of the aerofoil. In this case we are keeping the aerofoil stationary, and we are changing the incoming flow direction by angle alpha. So both of these cases are similar. So now if we change the angle of attack, what is going to happen? This half of the flow will go on top, the other half will go from the bottom. Because of the angle of attack, there will be distribution of pressure force such that the pressure force on the bottom of this aerofoil will be greater as compared to the top of this aerofoil, and as a result there will be net pressure force acting in upward direction, which will generate lift. Right, so this is the case when we increase the angle of attack. Right, now another thing that adds to the angle of attack is camber. So normally these aerofoils, they also have camber. They are cambered like this. So the shape of the aerofoil is like this. So this camber also increases, makes the aerofoil non-symmetrical, and as a result increases the lift force further. Right, now if we also add a camber like this, right, so again this camber will also increase the pressure force on the bottom side as compared to top side, and it will generate more lift. Right, thus making the aerofoil non-symmetric. Right, so for large Reynolds number flows, these pressure distributions are usually directly proportional to the dynamic pressure, with viscous effects being of secondary importance. Right, so the viscous effects that are near the boundary of the surface, when we have high Reynolds number, that means inertial force is very much greater than viscous force. In that case the flow is dominated by inertial force, and as a result we can say that the pressure distribution is directly proportional to the dynamic pressure, with viscous effects being of secondary importance. So this slide is just telling you that depending on the shape of the aerofoil, if the flow is non-symmetrical, or if we have non-symmetrical shape, it will induce more lift. Why it will induce more lift? Because of the pressure, uneven distribution of pressure, and at high Reynolds number, that lift force is purely because of the pressure force. And now these are some of the terminologies of an aerofoil. So or the wing. So if we have a wing like this, this length of the wing is called B. This is the length of the wing, which is called B. It is also called span of the wing. Span of the wing or length of the wing is denoted by B. Then we have the chord length. This is the trailing edge of the wing. Sorry, this is the leading edge, which is where the incoming flow will come, and this is the trailing edge behind the wing. So the distance between the leading edge, and this is called trailing edge. The distance between the leading edge and the trailing edge is called C, which is chord length. Now we have the span of the wing, the chord length. Now we already defined the angle of attack. Angle of attack is the angle which the aerofoil or the wing makes with the incoming flow. When it is horizontal, the angle of attack is 0. So the angle which the chord of the wing makes with the horizontal, C makes with the horizontal, it is either denoted by alpha. In some cases it is also called AOA, angle of attack. Right now we can calculate the area of the wing, which is called planform area, that area that we see when we look at the wing from the top, that is called planform area. The area that we will see when we will look from the top, we will only see a rectangle like this, which has length equal to span B and width equal to chord length C. So area, planform area is given as BC of the wing, right? And another thing that is important in this case is we have the aspect ratio. So the aspect ratio is denoted by AR. It is given as A, sorry, it is given as A over C, area over chord length. Area is BC. No, sorry, my mistake. BC or C, no, not possible. Let me see. The aspect ratio is defined as the ratio of the square, sorry, is defined as the ratio of the square of the length of the aerofoil to the planform area. Sorry, this is my mistake. So the aspect ratio AR is defined as the ratio of the square of the length of the aerofoil, which is B square, over planform area, which is A. So now you can clearly see B square over BC. Area is BC. So B will cancel with this. So we have aspect ratio AR equals to B over C. That means span over chord, right? So for long airfoil, for a longer wing, a long wing will have, for a wing, aspect ratio will be high. That means B span will be very much greater than C when we have a large wing, right? So now I'll just go through this again. The angle of attack is the angle between the aerofoil chord and the free stream velocity vector. We saw this. The chord length C of an aerofoil is the straight line joining the leading edge and the trailing edge. The aspect ratio is defined as the ratio of the square of B to the planform area. And then we have the wing loading. Wing loading defined as the average lift per unit area of wing increases with speed. So from here you can see that CL equals to L over half rho U square A. Now if I rearrange this equation in terms of L, it will become CL into half, so L over A. So lift per unit area equals to half U square rho, right? So this is the equation, right? So now you can clearly see that L by A is directly proportional to U square. So the wing loading defined as the average lift per unit area of wing will increase with the speed. So when we increase the speed, the lift force will also increase based on this equation, right? So and then we already went through this equation. Okay, in general, the lift coefficient increases and the drag coefficient decreases with an increase in aspect ratio, right? So now you can see here that these are called polar diagrams. The diagrams that you can see here are called polar diagrams, which are plotted as between lift force, drag force versus alpha. So now in this case, you can see that we have On y-axis we have the lift coefficient, and on x-axis we have the angle of attack, right? Now you can see three different graphs here. The solid line is for aspect ratio of 1. This dotted line or dashed line with small dashes is for aspect ratio of 3, and this dashed line with large dashes is for aspect ratio of 7. So what do you observe from this case? You can clearly see that as we increase the angle of attack, the lift force is increasing. The lift force increases up to a critical value. For example, if you look at aspect ratio of 7, the lift force is increasing up till this point. With further increase in the angle of attack, the lift force is decreasing, right? So I'll discuss about aspect ratio a bit later on, but now just an observation that after as we increase the alpha, so we can say that this is alpha critical. If before alpha critical, lift force increases with alpha, after alpha critical, what happens? The lift force decreases with alpha. So this point, beyond this point we have stall condition. You remember, stall condition is when we increase the lift angle of attack, the lift force, instead of increasing, it decreases. And why do we have this stall condition? We have this stall condition because of flow separation. So when we increase the angle of attack above a critical value, the flow will separate like this. When flow separates, it will form vortices, and that will induce additional force and will tend to decrease the lift force when increasing alpha, right? A form of instability. So this is where we have that stall condition, right? And then these are also experimental results. Now, as far as aspect ratio is concerned, now you can clearly see that for aspect ratio of 1, the lift force is less as compared to A3, which is less as compared to A equals to 7. So as we increase the aspect ratio, the lift coefficient is also increasing. Any idea why this happens? Anyone? Any idea why when we increase the aspect ratio, the lift force increases?
सर विंग लोडिंग इंक्रीज हो जाती है
जी,
स्पैन इंक्रीज हो रहा है सर।
सर विंग लोडिंग इंक्रीज होगी
नहीं, इसका ये इसमें आंसर उसने ये दिया हुआ है। अगर आप ये पढ़े दूसरा पॉइंट इसका, इसमें लॉन्ग विंग्स आर मोर एफिशिएंट। व्हाई? बिकॉज देयर विंग टिप लॉसेस आर रिलेटिवली मोर माइनर देन फॉर शॉर्ट विंग्स। अब हम देखेंगे कि टिप वॉर्टिसेस क्या होती है। अभी आप याद रखें कि ये एक विंग है हमारे पास, ये इसकी टिप्स है, ठीक है। अब आप एक चीज बताएं मुझे कि इस केस में इनकमिंग फ्लो तो इस तरह आ रही होगी, इधर इस तरह आ रही होगी। मतलब इसको मैं इस तरह अगर शो करूँ ना, ये ज्यादा क्लियर होगा। इसको एंगल ऑफ अटैक पे शो करते हैं इसको। अब ये इनकमिंग फ्लो इधर आ रही है, जो इनकमिंग फ्लो ऊपर से जा रही होगी वो इस तरह पास करेगी, और वो ऊपर से आएगी और नीचे की तरफ जाएगी, ठीक है। और इसी तरह जो फ्लो नीचे जा रही होगी वो नीचे जाएगी और ऊपर आएगी इस तरह, राइट। सर ये तो हो रहा है विंग के ऊपर। टिप्स के ऊपर क्या होता है? टिप्स के ऊपर 3D इफेक्ट्स भी आते हैं, और इन 3D इफेक्ट्स की वजह से जो है हमारा लिफ्ट फोर्स कम होता है या ज्यादा होता है। अब ये 3D इफेक्ट्स क्या होंगे? क्योंकि जब यहाँ विंग विंग टिप्स है, यहाँ विंग एंड कर रहा है, तो इसका मतलब है फ्लो जो है ना इस डायरेक्शन में भी आएगी, ऊपर से नीचे भी फ्लो आ रही होगी। फ्रॉम द बॉटम of the surface to the top surface at the tips, the flow will be coming in this direction also, इस तरह, ठीक है। इनको कहते हैं टिप इफेक्ट्स। जब हमारे पास विंग बड़ा होगा, when the wing is large, in that case these tip effects will be small, क्योंकि ये जो फ्लो है ये डोमिनेट कर रही होगी, क्योंकि उसका एरिया ज्यादा होगा, स्पैन ज्यादा होगा। जब विंग शॉर्ट होगा तो टिप इफेक्ट्स जो है वो सिग्निफिकेंट हो गए, और जिसकी वजह से आपका लिफ्ट जो है वो डिक्रीज होगा। हम इसको अगली कुछ स्लाइड्स में डिटेल में भी डिस्कस करेंगे, राइट? फॉर नाउ जस्ट रिमेंबर दीज टिप अफेक्ट्स लॉन्ग विंग्स आर मोर एफिशिएंट बिकॉज देयर विंग टिप लॉसेस are relatively more minor than for short wings, right? Now this is showing you the variation of lift force, lift coefficient with alpha. Now this is another form of polar diagram in which we have CD on y-axis and alpha on x-axis, right? Now you can clearly see the drag force behaves opposite to the lift force. When the aspect ratio is 1, the drag force or drag coefficient is more as compared to when aspect ratio is 3, and which is even more as compared to aspect ratio of 7. So as we increase the aspect ratio, the drag coefficient is decreasing, right? So we'll discuss this with this reference to wingtip vortices in detail also. So now one thing is clear: for aerofoils, you can see that the maximum CD that we are having is around, for aspect ratio of 7, is around 0.02, whereas for aspect ratio of 7, the maximum lift that we have is around 1.2. So it is 100, it is a lot bigger, more than 100 times bigger. The lift force is more than 100 times greater than the drag force. So that is why uh, as these aerofoils are used in applications where we uh, have more requirements of lift as compared to drag. And overall, if you look at an aircraft, the lift force in case of an aircraft should be such that it should be able to lift the weight of the aircraft. So that means it should be greater than the weight of the aircraft, right? And then when we talk about a commercial aircraft, you can see that in addition to the weight of the aircraft itself, it is also carrying around 400 500 passengers inside, right? So you can imagine the amount of load or weight that in tons that aircraft is going to have. And then those wings are uh, such designed in such a way that they can carry those load, not only carry, but they can lift it also. That means that lift generated by the wing is more than the weight of the aircraft. And also we discussed before also the engines that we have in the aircraft. What is the purpose of those engines? The purpose of those engines are to overcome the lift force, sorry, the drag force. So those engines, they are basically overcoming the drag force that we have in case of an aircraft. Okay, so now although viscous effects and wall shear stress contribute little to the direct generation of lift, they play an extremely important role in the design and use of lifting devices. Okay, so now I'll just repeat this and then we'll discuss about it. Although viscous effects and wall shear stress contribute little to the direct generation of lift, because we discussed that lift force is the result of pressure force, right? But the viscous forces become important when they play an extremely important role in the design and use of lifting devices. This is because the viscosity induced boundary layer separation can occur on non-streamlined bodies such as aerofoils that have too large an angle of attack. So clearly you can see that when we have stall condition that we discussed in the last slide, when we had CL and alpha like this, and then at this point we said that it is alpha critical. Beyond this point, when we increase alpha, the lift coefficient will decrease. Why? This will be stall condition. So why do we have that stall condition? We discussed that when we have higher angle of attack, we have flow separation. When we talk about flow separation, those flow separations are the result of separation of boundary layer, right? So in that case, when we have flow separation, the viscous effects become significant and they result in aircraft being stalled, right? Overall, the lift is because of the pressure force. But when we have alpha above the critical value, where we have stall condition, their viscous effects become significant. Okay. And now this is just showing you the same thing. So we have, this is the critical point, and then you can see that in this case the aerofoil is not stalled, right? So we have incoming flow in this direction, and then you can see that the streamlines are passing over the aerofoil very smoothly without flow separation. But now when we increase the angle of attack, you can clearly see that the flow is separating at this point. When the flow separates at this point, this will induce additional force in downward direction, and as a result, the lift force is going to decrease. This is called stalling. So at when the aircraft becomes stalled, the viscous effects becomes dominant. Okay, so if alpha is too large, the boundary layer on the upper surface separates. The flow over the wing develops a wide turbulent wake region. The lift decreases and the drag increases. This condition, as indicated by the figures in the margin, the figure that I showed in the last slide, is termed stall. So we already discussed about this. Now this is an example or results taken from a wind tunnel. So we have the incoming flow coming in this direction. We also saw a video of this. I'll show you again also. So now you can see that at this angle of attack, the flow separates. When the flow separates, you can see the dynamic nature of, so this is turbulent wake, and then you can clearly see it over here. I'll show you the video also. In many lift generating devices, the more important quantity is the ratio of the lift to the drag developed higher performance aerofoil. So now mostly the two figures that I showed you earlier, we had CL versus alpha, and then we had CD versus alpha. Now in lift generating devices such as aircrafts, we are interested to maximize L by D ratio. Why? Because we need more CL and less drag. More CL, it will be capable of lifting the aircraft, and less CD, we will be needing an engine with less power, right? So we want to maximize this. So because we want to maximize this, sometimes we also have a plot of CL. Mostly we have plot of CL versus CD for alpha like this, and it changes like this. I am not sure it for example something like this. Actually it's not here, but if we plot it like this, it will be something like this, and then we will have stall condition over here. Okay, so high performance airfoils generate lift that is perhaps 100 or more times greater than their drag force. So we already saw this also. So now this is an example of stall condition. So I'll just play this video.
As the angle of attack of an airfoil increases, the flow in the boundary layer stops, then reverses direction. This is called boundary layer separation. As angle of attack increases further, the point of separation moves forward on the airfoil until it has so disturbed the flow around the airfoil that further increases in angle of attack produce less rather than more lift. In this condition, the wing is said to be stalled. Okay, so now you can clearly see in this video that as we increase the angle of attack, what is happening? It is increasing. So the angle of attack increases, the flow becomes turbulent. When the flow becomes turbulent, what happens? It starts to have instability, dynamic motion, right? So this is an example of stall. So when we have stall condition, what is happening? The force or the wake becomes turbulent. When it becomes turbulent, you can see the up and down motion of that wake, and that up and down motion of that wake induces additional force that reduces the lift and increases the drag force, right? So this is called stall. Now, any questions so far?
जो पढ़ा था कि
वॉर्टिसेस में टाइम में डिफरेंस आ जाता है ऊपर वाले और नीचे वाले में।
आपका पीछे शोर आ रहा है, आप जैसे रिपीट करेंगे अपना क्वेश्चन?
सर हमने पढ़ा था ना कि जब हम वाटर शेडिंग पढ़ रहे थे
जी
कि
जी
एट टाइम इक्वल टू T1 में ऊपर वाला वॉर्टेक्स और नीचे वाले वॉर्टेक्स जो नीचे से आ रहा है उन दोनों में टाइम का डिफरेंस आ जाता है तो वो शेड कर जाते हैं।
जी
तो
जी
सर ये
बिल्कुल।
टाइम का डिफरेंस आता कैसे है?
ये आता है रिनॉल्ड्स नंबर के, डिपेंड करता है रिनॉल्ड्स के नंबर के ऊपर। ये एक्सपेरिमेंटली, दीज रिजल्ट्स वर फाउंड एक्सपेरिमेंटली। उसकी एक पूरा एक चार्ट है। व्हेन रिनॉल्ड्स नंबर इज लेस देन 5, उस केस में हमारे पास फ्लो सेपरेशन नहीं होती। उसके बाद हमारे पास इस तरह आएंगे, स्ट्रीमलाइंस जो है वो सेपरेट नहीं होती। ठीक है। रिनॉल्ड्स नंबर लेस देन 5 का मतलब है कि विस्कस फोर्स जो है वो ज्यादा है, इनर्शियल फोर्स कम है। इनकमिंग फ्लो वेलोसिटी जो है वो यू डी ओवर म्यू होता है, राइट। तो हम कह सकते हैं डी कांस्टेंट है और फ्लो प्रॉपर्टीज भी कांस्टेंट है, तो यू इस केस में बहुत लेस होगा। ठीक है। इस केस में हमारे पास ये आ जाएगा। अब जब रिनॉल्ड्स नंबर हम इंक्रीज करते हैं 5 से और बिटवीन 40, तो उस केस में क्या होगा? उस केस में हमारे पास फ्लो सेपरेशन होती है, लेकिन स्टेडी फ्लो सेपरेशन होती है। ये इस तरह हमारे पास आता है। जो फ्लो सेपरेट हुई वो एक वॉटेक्स यहाँ जनरेट करती है, वो एक वॉटेक्स यहाँ जनरेट करती है। ये वॉटेक्सेस स्टैटिक इधर ही रहती हैं और बाकी जो फ्लो है इसके ऊपर से ऑन टॉप ऑफ इट ये गुजर जाती है। ये केस है व्हेन रिनॉल्ड्स नंबर इस रेंज में होता है। जब रिनॉल्ड्स नंबर जो है हम 40 से इंक्रीज करते हैं और तकरीबन 200, लेट्स मेक इट 200 तक जाते हैं, तो उस केस में जब है, उस केस में जो आपको मैंने प्रोफाइल दिखाया था वो होता है। वॉटेक्स शेडिंग तब होती है, वो अनस्टेडी जो होता है ये उस केस में होती है। जब हम वॉटेक्स शेड होती है वो इस रेंज में होती है, जब रिनॉल्ड्स नंबर जो है वो 40 और 200 के दरमियान होता है। और जैसे ही हम इसको इंक्रीज करते हैं, अब जब 200 तक है, तो अगर हम इसको इस तरह प्लॉट करेंगे ना, तो ये जो वॉटेसिस हैं वो, ये इसकी स्ट्रेंथ कांस्टेंट रहेगी। मतलब आप कह लें कि ये वॉटेसिस जो है ये जेड डायरेक्शन, अगर ये जेड डायरेक्शन है, इसमें चेंज नहीं करेगी। ये जेड डायरेक्शन में इनकी स्ट्रेंथ सेम ही होगी। इस फ्लो को कहते हैं लेमिनार फ्लो। ठीक है। अब हम रिनॉल्ड्स नंबर जब 200 से बढ़ा देते हैं तो डायनामिक वॉटेक्स शेडिंग तो रहेगी, लेकिन फ्लो टर्बुलेंट बन जाती है। टर्बुलेंट फ्लो का मतलब ये है कि अब हमारे पास ये सर्कुलर सिलेंडर है और हमारे पास वॉटेक्स शेडिंग उस तरह ही आ रही है, ये वाटर से शेड हो रही है। ठीक है। अब फर्क क्या हो रहा है? अगर हम स्पैन में देखेंगे तो इधर वॉटेक्स शेडिंग इससे फर्क होगी, इधर में भी इस तरह हो, इधर में भी इस तरह हो, फर्क होगी। तो हम इसको प्लॉट करेंगे तो आप देखेंगे रेगुलर बनेगा इस तरह, ये इस तरह। इसको ज्वाइन करेंगे तो ये बड़ी इरेगुलर सी बनेगी। ठीक है। ये कहती है, दिस इज कॉल्ड टर्बुलेंट वेक, टर्बुलेंट वेक। ठीक है। तो अब इस केस में यू कैन क्लियरली सी दैट एज वी आर चेंजिंग द रिनॉल्ड्स नंबर, फ्लो जो है वो कितनी चेंज हो रही है। ये 2D फ्लो होगी, अगर बनाएंगे ये सेम रहेगी, इस केस में भी सेम रहेगी, इस केस में भी सेम रहेगी, जब तक रिनॉल्ड्स नंबर 200 है। लेस देन 200 द फ्लो इज लैमिनार, more Reynolds number greater than 200 the wake flow becomes turbulent, right? So जो ये vortex की टाइमिंग जो फर्क होती है, ये अनस्टेडी वॉर्टिसेस इनको कहते हैं, ये इस रेंज ऑफ रिनॉल्ड्स नंबर में आती है। इज इट क्लियर?
यस सर।
ठीक है। और ये आपने बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग क्वेश्चन जिससे पूछा है। अब आप इसको इसको इस तरह देखें कि अब इन सारे रिनॉल्ड्स नंबर के केसेस में अगर हम रिनॉल्ड्स नंबर को और फोर्स को प्लॉट करेंगे, ठीक है, तो अब हर एक, ये रिजीम अलग है, ये रिजीम अलग है, ये रिजीम अलग है और ये रिजीम अलग है। इन सारों की फ्लो फिजिक्स जो है वो फर्क है। क्योंकि फ्लो फिजिक्स इनकी फर्क है, तो ये जो फोर्सेस जनरेट हो रहे होंगे वो भी फर्क होंगे। इस वजह से जब हम प्लॉट करेंगे तो फोर्स, आप देखेंगे फोर्स चेंज करता है रिनॉल्ड्स नंबर के साथ। इसी वजह से फोर्स जो है वो रिनॉल्ड्स नंबर के साथ चेंज करता है, क्योंकि रिनॉल्ड्स नंबर जब चेंज करती है तो फ्लो की जो फिजिक्स होती है, फ्लो जो जो हमें जो उससे फ्लो की जो फिजिक्स इसको कहेंगे वो चेंज हो रही होती है, और उस फ्लो फिजिक्स को चेंज होने की वजह से हमारा फोर्स भी जो है वो चेंज हो रहा था उसके ऊपर। ठीक है। और इसी तरह एरोफॉइल के केस में भी है कि एरोफॉइल का जब व्हेन वी इंक्रीज द एंगल ऑफ अटैक, ultimately we will have stall. When we have stall, the flow will be separated, and that when the flow separates, that will decrease the angle of that will decrease the lift force and consequently increase the drag force. Okay. Okay, so now changing the angle of attack represents the change in the shape of the object. That makes sense. When we change the angle of attack, we are changing the symmetry of flow also. So that is equivalent to saying that we are changing the shape of the object. Other shape changes can be used to alter the lift and drag when desirable. In modern airplanes, it is common to utilize leading edge and trailing edge flaps. Okay, so now normally you might have seen aircrafts in which they had the wing have additional two slots in which we have or not slots or flaps, which we refer if those flaps are on the trailing side. If they're on the trailing side, if those flaps are over here, they are called trailing edge flaps. If these flaps are present on the leading edge, they are called leading edge flaps. Now these trailing and leading edge flaps, they can be actuated, they can move up and down, right? ये कंट्रोल रॉड के साथ कनेक्टेड होते हैं और वो कंट्रोल रॉड को इनपुट दिया जाए तो वो फ्लैप्स ऊपर और नीचे मूव कर सकते हैं. फॉर एग्जांपल इन दिस इज द केस व्हेन दिस फ्लैप इज रिट्रैक्टेड, मतलब ये मूव नहीं किया हुआ इसने. जब इसको रिट्रैक्ट करेंगे, इट इज रिट्रैक्टेड. जब इसको मूव करेंगे तो ये इस तरह हो सकता है, इस तरह एंगल चेंज करेगा. जब ये एंगल चेंज करेगा फ्लैप, तो दैट विल कंट्रीब्यूट to the lift force, that will increase the lift force. So now you can clearly see here we have a plot of lift coefficient on y-axis and CD on x-axis. So this is giving us the plot of CL versus CD. Now in this case you can see that this is the result when we have no flaps. This represents the results of no flaps. So the maximum lift coefficient in this case is between 1 and 2 here. Now we have the trailing edge slotted flap like this. And then this flap can move up and down, mostly down, to increase the lift force, right? So when this when this slotted flap, trailing edge flap moves down, it is represented by these results. So you can see that the maximum lift force in this case is around 2.5. Now, if we have double slotted two flaps on the trailing edge like this, then you can see that the lift force is also higher, around more than 3, right? And then for the leading edge flap, we don't have any data. So normally, we don't have. I haven't seen any wing having leading edge flap. So mostly they have trailing edge flaps here, right? So you can clearly see that addition of flaps is increasing the lift coefficient significantly, right? So now the next topic that we have is on circulation. So since viscous effects are of minor importance in the generation of lift, it should be possible to calculate the lift force on an aerofoil by integrating the pressure distribution obtained from the equations governing inviscid flow past the aerofoil, right? Because as we discussed that when we have very high speed flows, high Reynolds number flows, the viscous effects become insignificant. So that means the lift force will only be because of the pressure distribution. Now, because the lift force is only because of pressure distribution, we can assume the flow to be inviscid. We can neglect the viscosity, and as a result, we can use the potential flow theory or the Bernoulli's equation to find the pressure on the aerofoil, right? So now, in order to understand the concept of circulation, this is showing you an aerofoil which is symmetric about x-axis. So in this case, angle of attack alpha is 0. Now, because the flow on the top of the aerofoil will be identical to the flow on the bottom of the aerofoil, alpha is 0, the lift force will be 0 in this case. Now, if we increase the if we increase the aerofoil, if we increase the angle of attack very slightly, in this case we have increased the angle of attack but very slightly. So in this case, there is insignificant change in the lift force. Why is there insignificant change in the lift force? Because the flow separation is taking place at this point, which is the trailing edge, right? Because the flow separation is taking at this point, we can assume that the strength of the vortices or the shear layers above and below the aerofoil is almost the same, right? Now in order, this is a sort of an instability, right? Unsteadiness. So if we want to get rid of this instability, what we do, we can see here, we can add a vortex, we can add circulation. Sorry, we can add circulation over here, circulation of flow, which is representing the spinning of the flow. So when we add circulation of flow, what is that circulation doing? The angle of attack is still the same, but now the streamlines here, it is making the streamlines smoother. You can see that the streamlines are smoother now, and as a result, the lift force will increase also, right? So this is just showing you an example of circulation. So now this case which I showed you, this is equivalent to saying that we have this condition when alpha is greater than 0, but lift force is 0 because of this unsteadiness. And now if we add circulation, we also discussed about the potential flow of circulation in the last lecture, chapter 6 also, right? So this is the same circulation that we talked earlier, and when we add this circulation to the flow, what happens, you can see that when we add these together, the streamlines are now smoother. So this is the effect that circulation has on the flow path and aerofoil. So unrealistic flow situation can be corrected by adding an appropriate clockwise swirling flow around the aerofoil like this. This is clockwise swirling flow. The results are twofold. The unrealistic behavior, which is caused by this distribution of flow near the trailing edge, is eliminated. That the flow pattern of figure B, so this is figure B, is changed to figure C here. And 2, the average velocity on the upper surface of the aerofoil is increased, while on the lower surface it is decreased. So now you can see, if we are adding a circulation like this, right, the effect of this circulation is when this circulation combines with this incoming flow on the top, the velocity will increase here. Is all because of this clockwise. Now the same circulation will be in this direction here. On the bottom surface, it will be acting in this direction. So now this will decrease the velocity. So velocity increase, velocity decrease. So when velocity decreases, pressure increases. When velocity increases, pressure decreases. So this is how we can have more pressure in case of an aerofoil. The addition of the clockwise swirl is termed the addition of this circulation, right? So for now, you just remember that this is how we can add circulation to generate more pressure and as a result enhance the lift force in this case. Okay, so now so we'll just wind up with this last topic, and then we can discuss about it later on in tomorrow also. So now this is about tip vortices. So I'll just go through this slide and then we'll wind it up. Near the tips of the wing, so you can see an aerofoil or aircraft wing over here. Near the tips of this wing, this pressure difference will cause some of the fluid to attempt to migrate from the lower to the upper surface. Now what is happening, as we discussed, when the incoming flow is coming in this direction, the part of the incoming flow that is going on top of the aerofoil will be moving like this from top towards inward, right? And then the flow that is going from the bottom of this aerofoil will move from the bottom, and when it comes to the trailing edge, it will move up like this, right? When these two vortices will combine, when these two shear layers will combine, these will generate bound vortex like this, bounded vortices like this, right? Now, in addition to this, we know in case of an aircraft wing, we have more pressure on bottom of the aircraft as compared on the top of the aircraft wing, right? So now, since we have high pressure down and low pressure up, that means there will be net flow from high pressure to low pressure at the wing tips. That means the flow particles will move from the high pressure, which is below, to the high pressure on top at the wing tips, like this. This is also called 3D effects, like this, like this, like this, like this. Okay, now when this tip vortices and these vortices here, so when these two combine, so these vortices will also be this type of flow will also be passing over here, like this, and like this. When these tip vortices they combine with these incoming flow, they will generate helical vortices in the wake of this aerofoil, like this, right? So these helical vortices will have maximum strength at the tip, and their strength will decrease as we move inside the wing, because tip effects are all only present on the ends, right? So they will not be felt inside the wing. So this is what he's saying. So near the tips of the wings, this pressure difference will cause some of the fluid to attempt to migrate from lower to the upper surface. At the same time, this fluid is swept downwards, forming a trailing water swell from each wingtip. The trailing vortices from the right and left wingtips are connected to the bound vortex along the length of the wing. It is this vortex that generates the circulation that produces the lift. The combined vortex system, the bound vortex and the trailing vortices, are termed as horseshoe vortex. So now if you look at this surface, this is point A and this is point B. So now if I draw a line here, if I draw this section of the wing here, so you can see that from high pressure to low pressure, we have particles moving at the end. And then these are the bound vortices, which are because of the incoming flow. When these combine at the ends A and B, we have vortices like this. These vortices are called horseshoe vortex. Why they are called horseshoe vortex? Because they are of the shape of horseshoe. You can see that horseshoe has the same shape like this. So these vortices are called horseshoe vortices, like this, because of their resemblance to a horseshoe, right? And then we'll just leave today's lecture till here, and we'll discuss about it tomorrow in detail also. Okay, so this is it for today. So because I think we have to finish by 3, and so I think we'll just finish it here. If you have any questions so far, please feel free to ask. Any question?
सर पिछले लेक्चर में से एक क्वेश्चन था
जी जी
सर कि हम बात करते हैं कि अगर हमारे पास इनफाइनाइट एक फ्लैट प्लेट हो तो उसमें हम रेनॉल्ड नंबर में लेंथ की जगह स्मॉल एक्स लेते हैं ना
जी बिल्कुल
तो वो जब हम वो हमारा एक्स बढ़ता जाता है तो हमारा रेनॉल्ड नंबर भी बढ़ता जाता है इसका मतलब
बिल्कुल
ये है कि हमारी इनर्शियल फोर्स जो है वो बढ़ रही है और विस्कस फोर्स कम हो रही है
बिल्कुल
तो सर लेकिन जब हम उसी प्लेट को देखते हैं और उसमें बाउंड्री लेयर ड्रॉ करते हैं जैसे जैसे हम आगे जाते हैं तो बाउंड्री लेयर तो बढ़ती जाती है और बाउंड्री लेयर तो विस्कस फोर्स होने की वजह से बनती है ना तो रेनॉल्ड नंबर में हम ये बात कर रहे हैं कि वो बढ़ रहा है और विस्कस फोर्स कम हो रही है और जब हम बाउंड्री लेयर को देखते हैं तो वो भी बढ़ रही है
देखिए इसमें ये होता है ना कि u कांस्टेंट, अगर u कांस्टेंट है और म्यू कांस्टेंट है, x आप बढ़ाएंगे तो रेनॉल्ड्स नंबर बढ़ेगा, ठीक है। इसका मतलब है कि इनफाइनाइट प्लेट होगी तो वो बढ़ता रहेगा, ठीक है। अब एक बात समझने वाली बात ये है कि जैसे हम रेनॉल्ड्स नंबर बढ़ाते रहते हैं तो बाउंड्री लेयर जो है ना वो टर्बुलेंट बनती रहती है, उसके अंदर टर्बुलेंस इंक्रीज करती रहती है उसकी, ठीक है, ठीक है। इस वजह से फोर्स भी इंक्रीज होता है। तो बाउंड्री लेयर की टर्बुलेंस जो है ना वो रेनॉल्ड्स नंबर के साथ बढ़ती रहेगी, बढ़ती रहेगी, बढ़ती रहेगी। और वो
तो जो बाउंड्री लेयर बढ़ रही है वो टर्बुलेंस की वजह से है, विस्कस की वजह से नहीं है?
वो विस्कस इफेक्ट्स की वजह से नहीं है, वो जो बाउंड्री लेयर है वो भी टर्बुलेंट बनती है अल्टीमेटली, ठीक है। और वो इसलिए हम कहते हैं ना कि विस्कस इफेक्ट्स निग्लेक्ट इसलिए होते हैं कि जब बाउंड्री लेयर भी टर्बुलेंट हो जाएगी तो विस्कोसिटी के इफेक्ट्स तो बहुत निग्लिजिबल हो जाएंगे ना, क्योंकि मोस्टली इट विल बी डोमिनेटेड बाय इनर्शियल फोर्स देन।
ठीक है सर, ठीक।
एनी अदर क्वेश्चन? Okay, so in case if you don't have any question, I'll just take your attendance and then I just have an announcement. I'll just take attendance first and then I'll okay, I've already taken the attendance now. So okay, so I want to announce that I've already marked the